seems legit.
Everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing my Coddiwomple lunch bag. So we have a bag feet, we have a removable strap in case you want to carry it on your shoulder, and then on the back here we have a big slip pocket. On the front we have a 3D zipper pocket, and then the cool part, the top actually has a frame in it. So this will fit 3 food containers as well as some fruit on top, so it is quite large, but the frame just makes me so happy. So if you would like how to see how to make this, oh my gosh, I can't speak, please stay tuned. Alright, I've decided to do a more aerial view today, just for something different, because I just also really want to show off this fabric. It is epic. So, I have already put on my interfacing, so my stabilizer on the base and my thermal batting, I guess you'd call it, without having like its actual brand name. So the reason I'm using this is because it's a lunch bag and it will keep everything cold, or colder than if you didn't use it. So I'd like to start with my strap. So I'm doing... I know the bag doesn't have this, but we all know I can't follow my own rules. So this is going to be half vinyl, half fabric, just because I got really inspired by the fabric and I went off on my own little tangent. We've gone with like bright and colourful. I couldn't decide between green and yellow, so I've done yellow vinyl and I did the green waterproof canvas, because why not? Bright and happy is definitely my thing. So you just want to peel the backing off if it wants to come off, which apparently mine does not. So I'm just going to use my snips to kind of get in there and lift it off. And then I'm going to fold both sides into the center, like we always do. So again, I'm going to squish and pinch. And then just slide my fingers across. Takes a little bit of practice, but you can get fairly fast at this. So then we're going to pull some more off. Don't pull all of your backing of your sticky tape off in one go. Every single time I've done it, it sticks to my table. Not ideal at all. I'm also on the hunt for a better ruler because this one has basically rubbed off. So I will be looking into that soon. I'll let you know what I find. Alright, so now, see, I did it then and it's already gone down onto the table. It's like it knows. So I'm just going to continue on. I want to do all the straps first, and then we'll move on to the main body. But this is a very easy pattern. I would say it's beginner friendly. There's just, you do need double-sided tape for this, for the outer pocket. You could also always change the outer pocket if you decided it was too much for you. So I have already ironed this in half, and I'm just going to chop off some of that fluff because we don't need that much. I'm going to tuck under the raw edge, and then I'm on stitch length size 4, which is my nice decorative long length that I usually always use for straps. So then I'm going to go back through the first hole, stitch, pivot. And this is the canvas, so it's nice and thick and less stretchy. I'm a little bit obsessed with working with canvas lately. You will start to notice that. I'm also finding it's more durable, which is something that we want in a handbag. But at Spotlight, if you only shop at Spotlight and you don't shop online, they don't have as good a range in canvas as they do in like the quilting cotton. So I definitely base my life more on print, but when I've got the option of which one to choose, I pretty much always pick canvas because it's fabulous. So little bits come unstuck. Hello, Knuckles. But you can't see him today. He's laying down next to me now. When I get close to the end like this, I'm going to stop with the needle down, chop off most of it, and then just tuck under the raw edge. Now, you don't have to tuck it if you're going to use strap ends instead, because it will hide the raw edge for you. So if you're using strap ends, which I probably should have, just to be extra fancy. But if you are using strap ends, then you don't have to tuck the end under. The second side is always faster. And you can obviously make these in just fabric if you want to. I do recommend doing the base in the vinyl, but you don't have to. So I'm going to pop that aside, and then where's all my stuff? Ah, here it is. Right. So these are to be my handles, which I've got it in one big length. So I'm just going to chop it. I cut it as one whole thing, and then I can just chop it in half. So now that's done. I can put some more double-sided tape, again down the center. So we're just going to repeat the process for the handles. Although I'm about to run out of double-sided tape. See, that's it. So I'm going to leave that for something smaller on another thing. And grab another roll. So these will be the beautiful handles. And again, in the pattern, it is just fabric that I ironed in half and then tucked the raw edges in and ironed in half again. You can switch and change any handle that you found from any bag pattern. You can just switch it and change it to suit you. You just want to make sure that you really do push it down. If you have, if you don't have the strongest of arms or anything, you can use one of these scrapers, and that will help to crease the edge of the vinyl to keep it stuck down. You can just take it and scrape it along. I love my scraper. And then I shouldn't have that problem we had on the last one. So again, I'm going to take this piece. I'm going to chop off most of the white. We can tuck under a little bit, but you just really don't want that fluffy end because it's more likely to stick out. And then I'm going to go over the edge. Needle down. Pivot. If you are not going to clip this, just do it in small sections. You can also lay another piece of double-sided tape down in the center to hold this in place, if that's, you know, your thing. Chop off just past the end so we can tuck it under, because you will see these ends. Again, if you want to, you could put on some strap ends to make them look fancy. But it is only a lunch bag, so I'm not using strap ends, even though I could have. suppose it depends on how much of a foodie you are and how fancy you want to be. So we're going to get to the end, we're going to backstitch. I'm going to chop off that as best I can, and then I'm going to grab my thread zapper. I have replaced the battery, and so now it's back to working glorious. It was just a bit dead, was all. Not that I blame it, I have used it heaps. So that's another strap done. One to go, and then we're good. I do really like this with the yellow vinyl though. So I've gone orange lining and green outer pockets, just to be, you know, as bright as possible. I could have just done all the pockets in the same fabric as the outer, but because it's so busy, I decided not to. That's all. Makes it more of a design feature that way. But my pattern, I did do them all in one, and you'll notice that the pockets do just kind of blend in, which is not always a bad thing. But for this fabric, I really wanted to stand out, so that's what we're doing. So again, scraper, and I'm not using the edge with the felt on it. I'm just using the plastic edge. It's not going to damage it, and if that does damage it, maybe it shouldn't be used on a bag, especially a food bag. Right, next piece, make sure it's long enough. I'm good. It's always just good to check because I didn't pre-cut these parts. Alright, so we're going to stitch, backstitch, needle down, pivot. Stitch along. Get close to the end. Always stop with your needle down. Probably shouldn't cut this fabric with my snips. They are getting more and more blunt. Luckily for me, my husband can sharpen them, I hope. That is the plan. Right, trim, melt with the thread zapper. That bit's now stuck. It does cool down pretty quick, but again, I'm only touching it with my fake nails. Alright, that's all the handles done. Now we can move on to, let's do the slip pocket first. So I've just used, because I'm using the thick waterproof canvas for the outer part, I haven't interfaced it because it is thick enough. And then I want to grab some Wonder Clips and have the right sides together and just clip them. Now I had several options for this bag. If I had have made it, instead of the outside just being 2 pieces and I had have done 4, we could have had like side mesh pockets and things, but you also would have had more seams. And I wanted this to be like a fun, fairly quick sew. Especially because the front pocket is where all the effort's at. So I'm going back down to a joining stitch length. I'm going to stitch and backstitch. So most of the seams in this bag are 1/4 inch. Needle down, pivot, there, backstitch, trim off those tails, and then I'm just going to take some scissors and trim off the excess fabric in the corners so that I can get it to come out nicer, like that. Then we're going to turn it through. So this, the lining fabric is actually the super lightweight orange. It's just what was in my stash. It won't really affect it though. You can use the lightweight stuff. And then I'm just going to top stitch with a longer stitch length, because again, all that colour. So I'm going to go underneath, pull them back, and we're going to go stitch, back stitch, and just stitch the top edge. Back stitch, and trim off the tails. Now again, thread zapper, melt that one down and that one down. One pocket. I'm going to move the tub right next to the poppy. And then I'm going to take one of my exteriors. So this has got my Hefty, which is the Violin 1050F, and it's got an insulated batting. I usually sell Insulbright, but I have been having trouble getting it. So I've got in a special roll of other stuff purely to make up the kits. So we just want to crease the sides, and I'm just going to finger press them. If you're using like a cotton fabric, you can go ahead and iron this. But we just need to find the center here, and we're going to clip that as well. And then we're also going to need to find the top center later, so you may as well do that now as well. So we're just going to line up the center points together at the bottom here, and then I'm going to stitch down, across and up to fix this completely down. Now if you're having trouble with your batting moving, I've just used a basting spray to put mine on, but if you're finding that that's not enough, what you can do instead is sew or baste all around the edge of this entire piece, and that will hold it in place for you. I'm about to run out of bobbin thread. I can hear it. I'm just really hoping I can make it to the end of here before that happens. Oh, and I can. So yay. Trim off the tails. So that is our pocket on. Now we need a ruler. Where is it? It's over here. I pulled it out ready. And then we need to just rule and mark where we're putting our handles. So from here, it's here, like that. And then I'm just going to move this over a little bit more to draw that line. So that's one. And then the other one, which is here and here. So I'm just making a little L shape to find, or to be able to place this easier. Now, here's where we're going to get a little bit fancy. So I'm going to measure up 3/4 of an inch and put a line. Then I'm going to stitch that little box on the right hand side. Actually, we're going to check the bobbin first. Oh no, there's more than I thought. It was just making the noise like it was empty. It's trying to trick me. Alright, so this end that we've drawn. So we've drawn a line 3/4 of an inch up. So we're now going to stitch the bottom. And then you can either zigzag, or we can just go up and around. I'm going to go up and around and just draw the rectangle. So I'm going to go up to that mark, like that. And then we're going to go across at that mark, and then down to secure the bottom of the handle. Like that. So now technically it is secure. Oh, see, and now my bobbin's giving me grief. Like I knew it would. So rude. Then, after we've done our bobbin thing, we are going to take one of our D-rings And we're going to thread the D-ring on like that. And then I'm just going to stitch above there as well. So I'm going to stitch twice. I'm going to go all the way forward and all the way back because I need this to be nice and secure. Then we're going to just, if you don't want to back stitch, just pivot it around and sew on that same line. And then I'm going to do a third one in case you carry a lot of food. And then we can back stitch and trim off the tails. So that's one side. That's the complicated side. On the other side, we are going to measure up 1 1/4, and we're just going to stitch all of that, which should be that same distance over here. And if it's not, you can measure it, but it is, so we're fine. So 1 1/4, draw a little line so you can see it. I'm using Chaco pen, but you can also use any kind of a removable marker. So we're going to smooth it out so it's flat, bring it around, and we're going to attach it there. So you can do any edge first, it doesn't matter where you start. So I'm going to come up, right in the spot, down, needle down, pivot again, down, and across. And that is that side 100% complete. We don't have to do anything else to it now. So we've got our pocket and we've got our handle and we've got our little D-ring. So this is where we will attach our crossbody strap. Next up is the tricky one. We need some zipper tape. I need some scissors to cut, there they are. Scissors to cut my zipper tape. I went with bright and bold because that's, you know, right up the alley of this whole thing. Then we're going to put one of our zipper pulls on. We want to do it now so we don't forget. Right. Zipper pull on. You can put it anywhere roughly in the middle. And then we want, not the big ones, but the little ones. So mine are different colors for different parts. So I'm using the same color as the pocket. So you've got big zipper tabs and little zipper tabs. We want the little ones. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take something erasable. If I can find my erasable pen. There's chalk. Oh, there it is. I'm like, chalk's not quite going to cut it. I'm going to grab a little ruler. And I'm going to measure 1/2 inch and 3/4 on one and 1/2 on the other. Like that. Then double-sided tape. See, I can use that little bit that was left over here. We're going to put it on and in the end. So you can use a skinnier tape if you don't want to have to be that precise. I should probably be using a skinnier one. But anyway. On the edge. And on the edge. Now it looks like this. So we're going to take off the backings one at a time and we're going to fold this up to the line that we drew. Because I just find it easier to draw the line than try and eyeball it. So we're going to do that to both pieces. Now mine's non-directional, so I don't have to think about that. Then I might grab the skinny one because it's going to be easier. I'm just going to put a line right below the second mark that we did. I apologize if you can hear all the crazy noises in the background. They're doing a lot of stuff lately. So now I'm just going to stick the tape onto that line and then fold this over so it meets up with the other side. And I'm going to just use two wonder clips to hold it in place. 1 and 2. That's one down. So we're going to do the same to the other end. Now obviously you don't have to use the double-sided tape here if you don't want to, but I do find it much easier. And in fact you could put it on both sides if you wanted to, and then you wouldn't need any clips. So that is now our top, or our front zip, not our top zip. Our top zip is easier to do than this one. So I'm just going to top stitch, and then I'm going to bring in the other side and I'm going to chain stitch the other one. We don't necessarily have to back stitch if we don't want to, because those edges will be sewn in so you won't see them. But that is now the zipper done. I know that seemed like a lot, but you need to be super precise or it won't fit. All right, I went and got a healthy version of an energy drink today. So now I'm going to grab the actual pocket pieces and the lining, because we're going to just do the same to all of it. Now again, if this is too advanced to you and you're like, oh hell no, you can skip this pocket. I just wanted something more 3D. And I'm going to go recut that because it's got a little bit of a mark and I don't want that at all. So what we're going to do is I'll go recut that and then we'll come back. Would you believe I cut a second one and then that one had a stain on it too? It's because I kept the crap bit. There's always a bit that has a mark or something, and apparently it had a lot of marks. But anyway, take a ruler, draw our line. Now, even though we're drawing the line all the way to the edge, we need to put the tape a little bit shy of the edges, otherwise you're going to stitch it in. But it is easier to put the tape on now than later. So, I don't know, work it out for yourself. Maybe 3/8 of an inch, and then that'll allow seam allowance and to be able to get to the edge. But we're going to draw and sticky tape all of them. This one's a lot trickier than the other one. And I forgot to put my computer on silent, so someone's messaging me. Sorry about that. I do apologize. Right, so we're just measuring and ruling the line all the way across for all 4 pieces. So the 2 tops and the 2 bottoms. So lining and exterior, we're going to do the same process for everything. We're just repeating ourselves a lot. So again, sticky tape slightly away from the edge, nice and up to the line. And then slightly away from the other edge. So like that's enough. Oh, you can't see that. There we go. It's reflective. Haha. And the reason I'm using waterproof canvas in here is because you never know what people would put in that pocket. In my head, people are going to put like mini packets of sauce and salt and pepper. But if one of those packets of sauce was to explode for whatever reason, at least with the waterproof canvas, it's easier to wipe clean. So that was my theory. But again, if you want to, you could do cotton. I'm not your boss. Okay, so now that the sticky tape's on, we're going to do all of our darts. So we're just going to fold it together and then go to a joining stitch length. We're going to go 1/4 inch away from the edge. We're going to stitch, back stitch, and then keep stitching. And then even when you get, for those that have never done darts, You just want to keep stitching that 1/4 inch all the way until the actual edge. So I'll do another one. And I'm going to chain stitch these because there's a bunch of them. And chain stitching is fun. So you'll see, for those that have never done darts before, especially on an angle, you technically, even though it finished here, I sewed the seam all the way up. So it'll be up higher. So that's just, you know, tidbit of information. You don't just stop once you've like in parallel to the thing. You have to keep going all the way up. So then we're going to move on to the big ones. And then we can chop these off, pop them aside, and continue on. So we're just doing all the darts on all the edges of all the pieces, which is why we can chain sew them. Besides, I love a good chain sew. Any excuse, to be honest. So by doing the dart, again, if you wanted to not do the darts, you could do that. You could just have a flatter pocket. The reason we're doing the darts is because it will now sit up a little bit. So now I've got all of our darts. We're going to join them together with the right sides together, like this. And you want to start by joining at the darts. Everything should line up gloriously because they're all the same size. So long as you did all of your darts the same size, you shouldn't have an issue, right? Now, this big one is easier than the little one because it's bigger, you got more gap. But we do also have to do the little one. So again, right sides together, and the sticky tape ends will also be together on the little one if you get confused at all there. Other end, tuck them in. You want them to go opposite ways. It just helps it sit a little bit flatter. And then the sides as well. So we are going to stitch those little sides. That's why we didn't put the sticky tape there. All right, so we're now just going to stitch 1/4 inch all the way around. And back stitch. Another option is that you fold these down first. You can also do that. You can do this in either way. I actually forget which way I did it in the pattern. But you can fold them first or fold them second. So long as you put the tape on before you stitch your darts, otherwise it's really tricky. Right, so that's... I've played that game before when I made my husband's. I wasn't paying enough attention. And I didn't have my pattern out. I was just doing it from memory. And yeah, no, it was tricky. And I just ran out of bobbin thread. Luckily for me, I did do another one in anticipation of this, and I also just put a knot in it. Oh, my husband's home. Okay, so we pull the bobbin through, the bobbin thread through, that way it won't knot. So we're going to just go back a few stitches, stitch and back stitch to lock in both the old set and the new set. And then stitch there, trim the tails, and that's already been trimmed, it's just not in the bin, and we'll trim this one off as well. And so now we're going to turn them out the right way. Oh, this is so lovely and colourful, I'm excited. So push out those corners, and then you may or may not want to clip it or iron it together. That is entirely up to you. It should sit fairly well. So we're going to start with the easy one. We're going to just pull off the double-sided tape and then fold that edge up to the line that we drew. And this will then make sure we don't have any raw edges. Then I'm going to pull off the lining one and continue around. So again, this side is easier than the other side. So I'm just folding it up and over, continuing around. Whoops, I missed the edge there. Like so. And then if you need to, you may need to put some clips on those very edges there, like that. And if you folded it over beforehand, then it should all line up anyway. So this one's always trickier because it's littler, so you've got less space to do. But we're still going to do the same thing. So I'm going to push out those corners. See, it's just little. So again, I'm going to start with the exterior. You can start with whichever one, it doesn't actually matter. And then fold it up to that line and press it down. Now the reason this one's harder is because the corners get quite curvy here, because it is essentially a curve, right? Because it comes out and around. So it is a little bit trickier, which is why trying to put the sticky tape on before, or like now, is a lot trickier. So again, we're just going to bend it around, and the double-sided tape holds everything perfectly. And it is 1/4 inch, so you want to get a skinny one, skinny double-sided tape. And then again, I want to grab that raw edge of the backing, take it off. You can start wherever to fold up your tape. I like to start in the center just because it's easier, but of course you can start from wherever you like. And then again, put a clip on the sides because there's not really any double-sided tape there, and it just helps to hold it. So this is pretty much the trickiest part. So again, if you don't want the 3D pocket, you don't have to do it. We're going to grab our zipper and place it in front of us the way it's going to sit. And then, starting from this edge here, we're going to fold it together and put it all the way in that edge. Put a clip. Then we're going to do the same with the opposite edge. Now, it doesn't look like it fits, but that's because it's not curved yet. Alright, so again, right on that edge, put a clip. Now, you can do this two ways. You can either just kind of hold it in place, but I'm going to put more double-sided tape just so that it sits right where I want it to, right on that edge like this. Right, so the idea is we're just going to stick it in place and then I can top stitch it down. And because I want to hold both sides together, it will be easier with more double-sided tape. So, grab a piece, stick it over that seam, so the folded seam, you just want to put more double-sided tape right there. Peel off the backing, so we're going to do one side at a time. So we'll do the top and then the bottom, or the bottom and then the top, it's up to you. Hold it on the edge, clip it, and then pull that out of the way, and then just place it down on top of the tape. Now the tape doesn't have to go the whole way. I only kind of put it along the straight bit and it worked fine. The other option is if you prefer, you can put it on the zipper tape first and then push the backing down. So there's like a whole bunch of different ways to do the same thing. Backing off, tape down like so. And so now it's stuck. All I have to do is top stitch. Now again, if you don't want to use tape, you can use clips. I do, however, personally find the tape way easier, but that's up to you. So we're going to stitch and back stitch. And then we're just going to go around that curve, over, and the end, and back stitch. And so now we have no raw edges anywhere. I've caught the back and now it sits up like that. So that's the harder side. This next one's much easier because it's straighter because we're not so close to the curved parts. So that's why it's easier. So again, we're just going to put some double-sided tape along that seam. You can do as much or as little as you like. I'm not going to worry too much about going all the way into the corners. Flip it over, grab another piece, do the same thing. So we could have done all this with clips, but I promise it is much quicker with the double-sided tape. I did try it with clips. I've done one with clips and it was just fiddly. Right, so again, pull the backing off, just one side at a time, and then we're just going to grab this and we're going to put the corner at the corner, like so, add a clip, same with the opposite corner, fold it over, add a clip, like that. And then just touch the zip to the double-sided tape like that. Just touch it down. Pull off the backing to the back piece. And again, just touch it down. Like that. And now we're going to top stitch. So the tape is just holding it in place so that you don't have to try and get clips all the way through there. You also want to make sure that your zipper pull doesn't kind of get in the way. It is a thing that can happen. So that's now our outer pocket. Now all we have to do is stitch it down. So again, if you want to, you can put clips along the edge. Because this is waterproof canvas, I can just kind of roll it in my fingers and then crease it. And it works out wonderfully. Ta-da! One sticky uppy pocket. We're going to call it that. Oh, I didn't quite cut this as well. It was the edge of the roll. So I'm just going to trim this down so it doesn't mess with anything in or on the bag. Then, like everything, we're going to find the center. Make a little snip. And the top, we care about both ends for this, so make a little snip there too. And if your basting spray isn't really holding this together, feel free to just baste the whole edge at like 1/8 of an inch. So, we need a ruler. We're going to measure up from the edge in kind of the center bit. It is a chalk pen, so I can just kind of erase it off. And that, we also need to find the center of here. So grab it from dart to dart, bend it over, and then put a clip there. And that is your center bottom. So we will line that center bottom up with the center notch that we did on the line that we just drew, like that. Now I'm just going to hold it in place, and I'm going to start close to but not on the curve. So I'm going to start at the flat bit here, and then I'll show you how we hold it in place. So we're going to stitch, back stitch. I'm right on the edge of this, so like 1/8 of an inch, just to hold the pocket down. And then when we get close to this edge, I'm actually going to put my finger underneath and push up these darts so that it's sitting where we want it to actually sit. Then we're going up, and again I'm going to pop that up like so. We're going to stitch around the whole thing, and I'm going to move my clips so I don't knock them off. Along the top, again, pop this up. You pop this one up too. So that's where it's going to sit. So we're actually kind of holding it up and then stitch around. And then when we get back to the start, we're just going to back stitch. And so now your pocket has some depth to it so that you can fit actual stuff in there. So if you take, you know, your own salt and pepper shakers, they will actually fit because we've now created a nice raised area. And then just zip it up. So let's install our other handle. We're going to do it the same way as the first one. So again, you want something to mark with. That's probably too dark for this, so I'm going to use the white. So I'm going to mark there for that one, and then I can mark this one at the same time if I so desire, like that. I like to always hang my rulers back up. Oh, I don't know why I put that down. Oh no, I need this one. And this one. And so here, and here, and here, and there. So that's where our next lot of handles are going to go. So I want the shorter one, which is this. I'm going to line it up along the edge like so. Back through the first hole, stitch along, pivot, up, pivot, back, needle down, back to the start. I'm going to trim off those tails as opposed to just jump to the next section. And we always put on the right one first so that we're always putting our D-ring in the right spot. I mean, you can do it on the left if you want to do that, but you just make sure that you put both handles on in the same order, and that way your rings will be on the correct side. Because if they're both on, they need to be on the same side, so on opposite side of the bags, to hold the weight evenly. If you put one on the right side and one on the left side, it's going to hang wonky, which is not something that we want. So again, we're now going to stitch the next handle, up, pivot, across, down, and across. Trim off those tails, and that's our exteriors done. So let's move on to the zipper. So we need for this our zipper tape, our zipper pull, and then the two bigger, or the last two, zipper tab things. I need to singe that. And then we're going to there. So your zipper piece, right. We're going to singe the ends of this so that it doesn't fray, and then we're going to install our zipper. So I just crack it like a little bit, couple of inches, and then install my zip. Wiggle it on if it doesn't want to play ball, which, because of how today's going, of course it doesn't. It looks like it's on. I'm not sure why it's not going on. Both the ends are in, it's just being difficult. Right, try it again. One side, other side. Aha! Success. All right, so with these, what we are going to do is we are going to fold both these parts into the center like this so that there's no raw edges on the edge. And then we're going to fold it in half and then tuck under a little bit. So I'm going to sticky tape these, but you can also just iron them. So I'm going to put a piece down the center like this. And then stick that down. So again, you can iron this, but I just want to show you in case you're doing vinyl, because you can do vinyl ends. You can also just put zipper stops on, which I did think about, but I actually think these are cuter for a lunch bag. You want a different vibe from a lunch bag to a handbag, I think. So into the center, like that. And then we just want to tuck under the raw edge. Maybe. So like that. Really need to turn my noise off on my computer too. Okay, so other side, raw edge, and then we're just going to fold that over, and that is now our end zipper tab. So this side's got a little minion, so I'm going to put it right sides up so that we can see the minion, like that. And I'm just going to kind of put my zipper about halfway in. You can shove it all the way in, or you can just have it a little bit. It'll just give it that little bit more or less space, really. So I'm going to stitch, back stitch, go over the zipper tape. Now if you're using metal zips, don't stitch over your zipper. You will just snap a needle. And then over the end like so. Now we have a zipper tab. So let's do the same to the other one. So into the center. And then raw edges in. Just trim off those fuzzy bits. Put them in the bin. One piece, two piece, and that is the end of that sticky tape. Right, under the raw edge. So again, sometimes it doesn't want to stick down, so you just want to kind of heat it up, a little bit of friction, and then the backing should lift easier. I mean, not always, obviously, but most of the time. One, and two. And then tuck the raw edge under, and the other side. And so then, we're going to make sure the print's going the right way. So you want it, because this is my zip and it's closing to the left, I want the print to be up the right way. Which for the minion it is, so this one needs to be as well. And then we're just going to stitch, back stitch, stitch over the zip, needle down, pivot, and backstitch. Trim off those tails. And then we're going to find the center. So I'm just going to fold it in half and put 2 clips. I'm not going to snip it. We never snip it. Right, so I'm going to lay this right sides together and join the middle with the middle. Come up and along, and then when we get close to the end, we're just going to tuck it under so that we don't stitch it. Like so, and then tuck it under. I think I've cut my zipper too short. Like that. And then I'm going to grab a lining piece and just add it on. Again, we want to make sure that's tucked under. And then grab an extra one here. And add this into your clips you've already got. So we don't want the zipper to go all the way to the edge. I have tried to do it that way. I made one for my husband and it does work. And then you don't need zipper tabs, but I didn't like it as much. So now I'm going to stitch, making sure that that's out of the way. I'm going to stitch and back stitch. All the way across. So your zipper is just not quite in the ends. Now let's do the other side. So I'm going to grab my other piece. And again, I'm going to line up the center. So you can do the center of the exterior or the center of the lining. Both is more than okay. Because it's all the same, really. Center, center, line it up. And then work our way out, clipping it together. And then where we get to where we don't want the zipper to attach, we're going to just fold it under. Like that, and clip it down. And continue the other way. Now in my bag, I did do a lot longer zipper ends, but if you are a little bit short, you can do them shorter. Right, so there's that one. Then we're going to grab our other exterior, and to make my life easier, I'm going to tuck the handle into the slip pocket so it stays out of my way. And then you can come and join up the center with the center, or you can just join the edges. It is all much of a muchness. And then add this into the zip, and I'm going to put one extra clip on the end. And then we can go the other way. Now it is starting to get a bit thick. We're getting close to the end. Make sure that that's down. And one more clip there. So let's stitch this. And back stitch. You know what just happened? It just folded up underneath. So let me unpick that and I'll come right back. I do have to pick my child up from school soon because it is last day for the holidays. But we'll see if I can get most of this done, and then I'll just finish up once I've picked him up. So we're just stitching along. all the way along the edge, and I've just, because of the bulk, so what just happened was, because of the bulk of everything else, this kind of went like that underneath. So it is something that I forgot to remind myself, and therefore you, to work on. So, we now have this. So we're going to just join the sides now. So you want to make sure that that zipper is pushed out of the way. It won't be in this seam allowance because we stopped just shy of it. So I'm going to just add a few clips down the side. Mainly, I want to line up where the lining changes to the exterior. So you want to really make sure that that's lined up. And again, that your zipper is out of the way. So I'm pushing it back like so. And then I'm going to line up here. Now you can use 2 clips usually works best, or 1 very, very strong clip. So again, we want to line up those edges. Use as many clips as you deem necessary. It is a personal choice. You'll notice I'm putting none on the lining because the lining does what I tell it to when I tell it to do it. So, this is the 1/2 inch seam allowance, pretty much from here on out. Right, 1/2 inch all the way down. Then I always like to start on the thicker parts and work my way down. So I'm going to flip this over and then start at the thick point, which is the exterior. The exterior is always thicker. And work my way down to the lining, which is the waterproof canvas. Move that, hold this firm. And back stitch. Alright. Now I'm going to find the center of the bottom of the lining, because I've already done it to the exterior. We're going to do it now. Like that. And then we're going to install our bag feet, which are not in that one, they're in this one. Here we go. Right, bag feet. So we grab a ruler, you work out where you want your bag feet to be. Personal preference on where you put them. Different people like them at different spaces. I tell you in my instructions where I'm doing mine. But basically, if you make some crosses, wherever the crosses intersect is where we're going to put a foot. So, through all the layers, 1, 2, I always do 4 bag feet. Some people do 5, some people do 6. World's your oyster, you can pick. So I'm going to push the posts up from the back on all 4. Maybe. There we go. I just have to push harder. Flip it over. Put some feet on top. Like that. And then we're going to squish them together. Now you always squish it with the dome up. And you squish them until you feel them squish. I know I've said squish a lot, but it's because it's what we're doing. Right, so bag feet are in. So the bag feet are also helping holding all the layers together. So we now need to find our halfway point on our bottom. So we're going to fold it and fold it again. And then I want to grab this and I'm going to line the exterior up in the center points and make the clips face the lining like this. Alright, and so now I think it's time I have to go and pick up my child. So we will come back and finish up. But I will clip all of that, so, and then we'll come back and sew it. Alright, so my base is all clipped together. And so now we just need to sew. So I always like to start on a straight edge. So right here, I'm just going to stitch forward and back a couple of stitches to lock them all in. Then I'm going to push this down out of the way and just slowly stitch around. Now because of the base stabilizer in here, you want to go nice and slowly because it will try and pull out of shape a little bit. So I'm just going slowly around that corner, and I'm not pulling the clips off until I get right up to them. So around the corners. You can always go a little bit faster on your straights, but it's not a race, so don't go faster than you can handle. Going around the corner. And then when you get back to the start, we're just going to backstitch again. And so that is the base now beautifully in. So now we're going to do something similar to the lining base, but we are going to leave one side open to turn the bag through. Because there's no inner pocket for this, it is just to hold all of the stuff. We will need to leave a little bit of a gap in the base. So I've just folded it in half to find the center on both sides. And then I'm going to stick it in my lap so that I take the weight of the bag. And then I'm going to put right sides together, and you can just pick a side, it doesn't really matter which. And we're going to clip it in the center. And then I'm going to hold it out flat like this, and then add some more clips. And you'll just put as many as you deem necessary. So I always personally need less for the lining than the exterior. So there's that. Then I'm going to come and clip the opposite side in the center as a temporary hold. So this one won't be staying. And then I'm going to run out to the side here and add a clip at the edge there. And then I'm going to run out to the other side here and then move that clip, so this will be our gap. So now I've created the gap. Now we just need to do the corners. So with these two fingers, I grab the corner piece in the corner and then just kind of straighten that out. And if you pull, not too hard, but pull so it's firm, it will actually fit itself into the corner, like so. You've got to remember it is a 3D object, so it may look like it won't fit, but then once you kind of push it to the curve that it is, you'll find that it probably will. So let's do the same to the other end. So I'm going to grab these two parts with my fingers like this, and then just with my thumbs pull this out until it is straight. And then again, all my clips are facing the base piece because we're going to sew with that way up. In the corner, I'm just going to add 2 clips into those corners to hold it where I want. You can add more if you need to. You can put the clips right next to each other, like so. And then I'm going to start at this clip here at the edge and backstitch. Now the bigger the gap you leave, the easier it is to turn, but you do not want to leave the gap on your corner. And you want to stop with your needle down before you reposition the bag. needle down. I'm going to flip the whole bag so that I'm not fighting against the weight. I always find linings easier. And if you prefer, you can put your lining in first. I actually usually do that, but it's not a big deal if I don't. Unless it's like a big overnight bag, and then you really don't want to fight with all that extra weight. So we're coming up to the last corner. So I'm just going to back stitch when I get onto the straight. Trim off those tails, and so now I have that much space to turn the bag through. So I'm going to put my hand in. I'm going to find where the zipper is and crack the zipper open. Where is it? There it is. So a lot of you get really concerned when you don't open your zip. What you can do is put your finger just in front of the zip and just slide your finger along, and it will actually open it up for you. So don't be too concerned if you're like, oh no, I forgot to open it. You just put your finger right in front of it, especially if you've got a fingernail. If you don't have fingernails, take your snips close and poke it in, and then push along the teeth, and it will open the bag for you. So I'm just going to pick a corner and push it through. Got to start somewhere, and I always like to start in the corners. So we're pushing it towards the lining. You can even go in and grab it. And then I'm just going to slowly kind of wiggle the bag over itself. So the idea is, in a perfect world, you can squish your bag completely and pull your lining over. If you can get your lining completely over your bag, you've won the game of birthing the bag. So you can literally just squish it up. I'm not worried about putting any kind of rumples into the fabric because I can just iron it out later. But once this goes over the whole bag, like that, once you're there, you know you've won. So then I can just put my hand in and push the bag away from the lining. I'm using my fingers to run along that seam, like so. And there's my base done. So now all that's left to do is to tuck in this raw edge and stitch it down. So what I like to do is I take my fingers, put it in the hole like that, and then pinch it. And then you want to start at one end and add your clips along. Now you don't have to do clips. If you can do this without clips, by all means go ahead. But we just put the clips right on the edge, making sure that they're lined up, because we want to stitch as close to that edge as possible. So then you can come to the other end and line that end up if you'd like. Work your way into the middle. Some like to work right to left, some like to work left to right, it doesn't matter. Right, so I folded that so it's now right on the edge. So then we're just going to lay the bag down, whichever way is easier. And I'm going to change my thread color so that this doesn't stand out. So I'm going to switch to an orange. This is the last part of sewing anyway. So when stitching it closed like this, in a zipper pocket it doesn't matter so much, but this is obviously not in a zipper pocket, it's in the base, and you don't want it to stick out. So we're going to change our thread color to match the lining color. I moved my cart over, I had to reach a long way there. So I don't rethread my entire machine, I chop it off here just before all the threading part, and then I tie the old one onto the new one, and with the foot lifted I'm going to pull it not through the needle but like the one just before you're going to thread it through the needle, you pull it through, and that's the whole machine threaded in like 5 seconds. I personally, everything is time versus money, especially if you're sewing to sell. So that amount of thread is definitely worth, you know, the 5 seconds it takes to rethread a machine. So I waste a little bit of thread, but I save myself a lot of time. So you just have to calculate whether that's worth it for you or not. Now I'm stitching as close to that edge as I can without falling off the edge, because we don't want to do that either. Here's my end point. And then when we get there, we're gonna just stitch and back stitch a couple of stitches and then trim off those tails. And then, and now it'll be a bit kind of fluffy to begin with. Let me just turn this up for you so you can see. So you want to push the base all the way in, like so. And so now we just need to do our top stitching. So in the bobbin, I'm going to keep the orange because that's what I've got going on. But I'm going to switch back to yellow on the outside to do my top stitch. Now you'll have more of a zipper tab than I do, and that's okay. So I want to stitch it from the outside. So let's go back to orange on, yellow on top, sorry. And we can do that now. So again, I've trimmed it off. I'm tying the new one on. Like that, and then I will just pull it through and trim it right next to the knot so that you're not wasting as much thread. Never try and pull the knot through your needle. You will bend and or break your needle, and if you bend your needle and don't realize it, they may then also wreck your timing in your machine. Alright. So, we can start wherever. I'm going to start just off to the side here, and we are going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch all the way around. Now, if you can't manage 1/8, you can do 1/4. But if you can try and do 1/8, I do recommend it. We're actually also going to go up to a joining stitch length to make it prettier. Now, if me doing it this way is the quick way of doing this, if you struggle with this, you can actually turn the bag inside out so that you're not fighting against the bag. So I am tucking my lining underneath, making sure that it's lined up with the fabric. And I'm just doing it in small sections, making sure that my needle is in the down position each time. I'm going to bring the bag around. Now the sides shouldn't be too thick, so you should just be able to sew straight over them. And I'm going to bring some more of the bag around, tuck under the lining, because you can see here it's kind of trying to poke out. So stitching the lining down will make sure it sits nicer. Another way to prevent that, if you're finding that it is really poking out, you can, when you're making the bag, you can trim down some of the batting so that it's not in that top seam. So you would just trim off about 1/2 inch from the top, and then it won't be in this top seam. The downside to that though is it won't catch, so it's more likely to sag. But if it's too thick, then that is a solution. So now I've top stitched all the way around. I've got back to the start. So I've back stitched and I'm trimming off my tails. So now from the inside, the stitch color matches, and then from the outside, the yellow has continued throughout all of the rest of it. Now, if you're not putting a frame in, you are done. So you just zip it up and there is your bag. It will just have kind of a pointy top. However, if you're going to add a frame in, we need a ruler. and an erasable something, and we're going to create a line that is 1/2 inch down from that first one. So we're going to basically make a 1/2 inch channel the whole way around. Right, so I'm just going to continue to flip the bag around to get a nice straight 1/2 inch line. Now it is much easier to mark it on here than to try and guess it. But if you're really good at guessing it, I guess go right ahead. But we all know that I like to do things quick as possible, and even I mark it. So I would probably mark it if I were you. So you're going 1/2 inch from your stitching. So if you did 1/4 inch stitching from the top, like 1/4 inch stitching, it just means that this will be down a little bit further. Another way to do this is to slot it over a table or something. It does look like I'm doing it on a curve, but it's just the way the bag sits. And back to the start. Right, so I've now drawn a very faint line the whole way around there. And so now we're just going to stitch directly onto that line. So again, I'm going to come in, I'm going to start at a side because I like to hide my stitches. So we're going to stitch and back stitch to lock it in. Now, again, I want to make sure that my lining is smoothed down underneath. And then we're going to just stitch along the line. Now it's going to look like I'm doing weird and wonky things. It's just because of the way the bag sits. I'm going to pull out some more, and I'm going to again make sure it's all smooth underneath. Grab the next lot. Some bits will go quicker than others. Now to make your own frame, there is a separate video. You can just use coat hangers, those wire coat hangers. Right, so I'm nearly back to the start. You've also got to make sure that your little zipper tab's out of the way, no matter how long you made your zipper. Back to the start and back stitch. Of course. And in that last back stitch, I'm going to show you what just happened, because now I'm going to fix it. I caught some of the lining. Remember how the whole rest of the way I've pulled it down? Well, I've caught it just here. So I am going to unpick the stitches that are catching it and then just stitch over that section, because that doesn't look nice. It's not a big deal, and if this is your first ever bag and that's your only problem in the bag, you could probably leave it. But I am here to show you how to fix problems. So I literally just back stitched over that. It's so annoying. You don't want to just pull and tug on the fabric though, because it will break. Now, because it was only the back stitching that held it, if I take my thread zapper and melt all the ends I've just created, it's now still not going to come undone, and I don't have to do any more sewing. Not that sewing is a problem, but now I've just melted them together and everything's back to beautiful. So now we have our frame channel. So you want to pick a side, and we're going to unpick the stitches between the two channel lines that we made. So I just want to unpick just the lining stitches in here, which should only be like 4 or 5, maybe 6. I'm going to count them for you. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've got 5. You may have more depending on what you've got your normal thread stitch length at. They're also quite tricky to get to because, you know, my sewing machine did a good job of joining them. If you want to use a quick unpick, by all means go ahead. There's another one. And one more. I'm just kind of massaging it out there. And I think there's one more along the top. So we need to create this space to put the channel through. So let me just grab my frame and we'll be right back. Already here. So these are the frames. I will be selling these. And they have these little like ends on them. So these are just like a rubber that go on the end. If you're making your own frame, you can just wrap masking tape on the end or put a small dollop of hot glue just so that the end isn't going to stab anything. All right, so here's the frame. And then all we're going to do is push it through the gap. Now, the first bit might be a bit tricky because it's trying to get past the seam allowance. But once that's in, watch how easily, I need to angle this up so you can see better. You just push. Because we made a big enough thing, it just fits right in. Hello, Jessica. Do you want to say hello?
Is it Saturday this?
It is Saturday.
Now we can build this.
Yes, in a minute. Give me 5 minutes, okay? And I'll come build it for you.
Wait, who's over there?
There's everybody on here. He hasn't seen this fabric yet.
There's Pikachu.
There is Pikachu. All right, give me 5 minutes, okay? And I'll come out and build it.
Okay.
Okay. So that's one side in, and you can see already it is sitting nicer. Then we're going to take the other side and feed it in the other way. So the first bit, again, will be a bit tricky because you've got to get, and you've got to move the lining so that you can actually get in there. But because of the rubber ends, I'm not worried about stabbing through anything. Okay. If it's being stubborn like that, what you can do instead is grab your snips and just kind of lift the opening and move that lining so that I can actually get in. So there it goes. And then again, we're just going to push gently. And then sometimes at the end you might have to wiggle it a little bit. The end can sometimes be a little bit stubborn. And you also want to make sure you don't lose your cap on the end. They're not glued on when I send them to you. Although if you wanted to, you could glue it. It is just a rubber stopper. Now, if you want the rubber stoppers and you don't live in Australia, I got my original ones from an auto car shop. They are 3mm vacuum seal plugs or ends, and you can buy them in like a pack of 5. So if you really do want the ends, you can get them. I obviously went somewhere and bought mine in bulk. I bought like 100. So this last end is it's only being so stubborn because it keeps catching on that underturned lining. So if you lift it up with your snips, and then it just needs to go in a little bit more. Like that. Oh, nearly. It also may need to shift around just a little bit more. Oh, come on. Get on there and stay on there. Sometimes standing over things helps me personally. This one is just being stubborn for stubborn's sake, I swear. So I'm going to get a really big needle, or you can use a stiletto or sewing awl, and I'm just going to lift up that lining. I'm really not sure why it's being so stubborn. Aha! Got it. Right, so it's always the end that's a pain. Now, if you want to, you can stitch that back up by hand, but otherwise, we just go and straighten up the bag once more. And then we're going to fold it down at the edges so that they come together. Alright, the first time always needs a little bit of help, but otherwise, look at that. Now it's got a very cute little frame, and so when you open it, it opens the whole way out. So that's really helpful for food situations because now the edges aren't going to sag. Not that you'd be putting anything open or wet in there, but it is still just nice to be able to have that whole top nice and open. So all that's left now is our strap. So we're going to need our hole punch and our actual strap that we did earlier. So I'm going to take the strap adjuster and go around that middle bar. Now you don't want to have too much of a hangover here unless you're going to put 2 rivets. But because this is a food bag, 1 should be sufficient because nobody's going to put that much weight in it. If you are selling them and you're not just marketing them as a food bag, you then may want to put 2 rivets instead of just 1. So because there's not 2 straps, I don't need them to match. So I don't need to measure out the hole, I can just eyeball it. When it's handles though, I always like to measure. So now we're going to go to the end here, thread one of our swivel clips on, and we're having the back against here. Now you don't actually even have to use swivel clips. You can just use the ones that bend back and forth instead of swivel, but you have to think about which way you're putting them on if you use those. I don't sell them in hardware like this. I do have some for my big bags. So we put another end on there and then we squish it down and we're all done. And then your swivel or your strap adjuster just clips onto, whoops, the 2 D-rings. And you don't want to clip. There we go. 1 and 2. So there you go, guys. We are all done with our lunch bag. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.